Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about talent. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, hi Frederick, you said about talented people with fewer years and you can see that they guarantee success. What are the qualities of those people? So basically what I said before guys is that just for context now, doesn't really matter after 5 years how many years you've spent on software development. I know that sounds weird, but the average software developer doesn't actually grow much after their first sort of 5 years. Some people do, some people get really, really good and like really push it and become the best of the best, but you have to understand, guys, that most software developers are just doing things because it's a job. I swear, it sounds weird. You might be sold that every software developer is like this passionate person who does coding and like really loves it and does tech talks and stuff like that. No, most of them are really just there to do a job. And so after 5 years, roughly, they learn everything that they need. That's why you have that magic number where you most people are looking for someone with 4-ish, 5 years minimum in many cases. Well, 2 years is usually the minimum, but I hope that you see what I'm saying. And so I've argued that the people that are truly talented, they basically guarantee success. And it doesn't matter if they have 5 years or 10 years or 15 years, like they're basically guaranteeing success. After 5 years, they are, as I like to say, a real senior is an insurance card. And a real senior is the sort of individual that I'm talking about. So usually what I say is that what I'm looking for when I'm dealing with or trying to find such an individual, it's honestly, I we do you don't go hunting for these people. They they drop into the recruitment process, and you're just sort of making like a whatever religious ritual you need to just thank whoever you're praying to that this person is here, and then you try to sell them to. In my case, because I'm usually not the line manager, I try to make sure that they get hired because I know for a fact that if I put this person on any project, they're going to make it a success. And the first and foremost thing they have is strong tech skills, which, surprise, surprise, nobody expected me to say that, right? Strong tech skills is definitely the first one, and usually within the tech skills that they have, I find that it's very rare that a specialist, like someone who really just knows one thing, is all that valuable to a software team because the ecosystem and the things you need to know is just growing and growing and growing. And today you have to have a fairly extraordinary individual in order to have all the things that they need to know in order to deliver software from their laptop all the way into production in one individual. Honestly, guys, even at my level these days, where I work as a principal engineer, something, uh, the guy, and these are supposed to be. I mean, there's nothing higher than that within an average IT organization if you're excluding, of course, real, just pure management or CTO level type of things. And they don't really know all the things about how to do things and so forth and so forth. So when you find an individual who really does have that extra passion, who knows, I like to say that the best software developers are always full stack, and that's not because they're equally good necessarily at everything. It is because they generally have an interest in the whole process. They don't just focus on one little thing and then that's the whole story, right? They learn how to actually ship software. And so shipping software is more than just that specific programming language that you are working in or that framework. It has to do with everything from pipelines and delivery and CI/CD types of things to hosting things and knowing basic things about networking, knowing about of course, your own stack, etc., etc. It's a bigger area. And then of course they understand domain knowledge, or like the importance of it at the very least. Of course, when you're joining a new company, you may not have tons and tons of domain knowledge. You might have domain knowledge within certain tools. That in front end, that is by far one of the most important things to look out for. If you're looking for a senior front end developer, you should check how well they know the trends and the community and how things are working within front end, because front end is one of those sort of wild west types of areas in many cases where people can make very widely different choices and some of them are going to work out and some of them are not going to work out so well. So here, domain knowledge or expertise within that field or that area of web development is a godsend. It's something that I always react to immediately. But what I'm more specifically referring to when I'm talking about the company itself is that they understand that in order for them to succeed on a project, they actually have to know how the business is working, how the domain is working, who knows what, and how to get connected to these sorts of people. They take the time to understand the business logic and requirements of the domain they're going to deal with so that they can accurately translate that into code. They're not the sort of person who just sits and, if they get an unclear story card, they sort of guess what it's going to be or just sit and wait until somebody tells them. They actually go and try to figure out, is there any documentation? Is there anything that I can ask someone where I can get a clarification on this specific piece of logic so I truly understand how to make this thing? Because trust me when I say this, guys, a lot of really shitty systems are usually apart from the obvious things about technical skills, in many cases they end up the way they do due to the fact that the business logic is so messy, or it becomes messy due to the fact that the people who are making the system, like the software developers themselves, they don't actually take the time to understand what the code is supposed to be doing. In short term, they might be able to figure out a few things because, of course, short term you're looking at bugs and things like that, and usually you have a stakeholder or two who's going to do some validation. But long term, if you don't actually know the business well enough to understand how the things are going to go long term, I like to use the analogy, it's like laying a brick road. If you just understand the current brick that you're going to put in place, then by the time you get 300 or 400 bricks into the road, it's going to go off in a completely different direction, and now you have to steer the whole thing back again, and usually that's going to end up with a really shitty road. So having someone who is truly talented, who understands that the code is just a manifestation of the business logic, and if you don't understand the business logic, your code is going to be shit. Well, that person is invaluable. It's a truly gifted individual who has understood that engineering is not about engineering per se. It's a means to an end. And if you don't understand what the end goal is and the requirements on you, well, you're going to build something for sure, but it might not be the right thing. And then I would say that I kind of touched on it. It's going to be my last one. I'm going to say that the last thing they understand is how to find answers to their questions. Because as I said, even if they're masters in tech, the domain changes for every company, guys. Every single company you go to has a different knowledge domain. And one of the most important things you as a software developer or a truly talented individual can do is to master the art of just figuring things out. Because if you... honest guys, the people who sit and wait for somebody else to tell them how to do things and so forth, the only time that works long term is when you have a very simple sort of setup, very simple domain or something like that. In many cases, entire companies can't move forward because you have managers or what have you who basically just sit and wait for a forecast or somebody else to tell them what to build, and the system never goes anywhere. Because honest to God, guys, the whole saying about if you want something done, you have to do it yourself, there is a bit of truth in that. I would say a lot of truth when you're dealing with IT. So what I want you to take away from this is that if you're asking me personally what I look for in an individual who I quote-unquote call a real senior, or someone who basically guarantees success on any project, is first and foremost strong tech skills. They really have to know their stuff because IT is large and it's just growing. In other words, if you have a developer who really truly understands how to get code all the way from the laptop into production and host it and do all these sorts of things, then you have an individual who is as capable as possible to solve all your issues for you. Second thing is make sure that they have I make sure that they understand the importance of domain knowledge, because a truly useful senior is usually an individual who has the answer to all the questions, because sooner or later, guys, you're going to figure out that half the battle is sort of just writing the code and understanding how the code works, but the other half is to understand what it's supposed to be doing and understand the business and all of the, like where all the documentation is, if there is such a thing, and where all the important people sit. Where are the decision makers, movers and pushers? How are specific other external systems working, and so forth and so forth. Trust me, I spend more time doing that sort of thing when I'm working as a tech lead or a principal, the engineer, staff engineer, or whatever they're making up these days, than I do in many cases just doing the coding. Like it's a 50-50 split. And that is one of the most important things that you can achieve. It's definitely important if you want to go higher. The higher up you go, the more you need to know in terms of domain knowledge. And then finally, they are the sorts of individual who just goes and figures stuff out. If you give them a task and they don't really fully understand something, you can trust that they will make sure that they figure out how to learn how to do that thing. And in a junior, that's going and googling by yourself. Mid-level, that means messaging or emailing some team that owns an API or whatever. As a senior, it's literally get to know everybody. Like just go and have coffee with all the people that are the movers and pushers for teams that you might depend on. That's a hot tip, by the by. Get friendly with all of the manager types for the external dependencies that you have, because I promise you, when those people don't reply to your team members, the only card you have to play is to go to their manager and see if you can put some pressure on them. And that is a very valuable skill if you want anything done. Have a great day.